Hi, I'm Mark, 34, and the day my wife ran away with my cousin using my savings was the day finally stopped believing rock bottom had a limit.
It started at breakfast.
She didn't look at me, didn't smile, didn't even pretend to be part of the same life.
I need you to lend me $4,000 for my sister's business.
Urgent, she said, scrolling her phone.
And don't touch the joint account. That's for our trip to Asia. I transferred the money without hesitation. She was my wife. Trust was supposed to be the default, not a negotiation. That night, after closing the first big investment round for my startup, I came home ready to tell her the good news. The house answered with an echo. The sofa was gone, the TV gone, the dining table gone. Every piece of furniture we owned had vanished except a single mattress on the floor and an old armchair shoved in a corner like a leftover apology.
My phone buzzed. A video.
Instagram. My wife and my cousin, arm in arm at the airport, dragging luxury suitcases I never bought. Caption. Heading to Bali. Thanks for financing our future, fool. My cousin commented under it. Thanks for the sponsorship, little cousin. I opened the joint account.
Balance $0. $47,000 gone in one clean cut.
I didn't break down. I didn't scream.
I just stood there in the hollowed-out house holding my laptop like the last piece of reality I had left.
The next 3 days were a blur of sleepless nights and autopilot survival. But on the fourth morning, something melted away: fear, paralysis, whatever it was.
I woke up with clarity sharp enough to cut steel.
It was time to stop being the victim of other people's choices. I walked into my lawyer's office looking like a man who hadn't slept in days but had finally remembered he had teeth.
Marcus flipped through the screenshots, the transfers, the Instagram posts, the bank statements, page after page of raw betrayal documented with their own stupidity. When he reached the caption, "Thanks for the sponsorship, little cousin," he closed the folder slowly and looked at me over his glasses.
This isn't petty theft. This is aggravated fraud committed by two people acting together.
We can take them apart legally. Good, I said. I want everything back.
And I want justice. He leaned back, thinking. First, we file the criminal complaint.
Second, we freeze anything they own.
Third, everything they spend becomes evidence of intent.
They had plenty.
While they were busy uploading photos from Bali, eating $200 dinners, buying matching watches, and posting living the life we deserve, I was working 16-hour days fueled by humiliation and caffeine.
Without the emotional drain of my wife's constant criticism, I was accelerating faster than I thought possible. 2 weeks later, my startup closed a $500,000 seed round. My partner stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. What happened to you, man?
You're unstoppable. I removed some distractions, I told him, and kept coding.
Meanwhile, their vacation turned into a public evidence log. A mutual friend sent me screenshots since they had blocked me everywhere.
Each luxury purchase was another nail in their own coffin. But the call that detonated everything came from my aunt, my cousin's mother. You're suing your own wife?
She barked.
She stole 47. Oh, I said.
Oh, don't be dramatic.
She's young. She wants to enjoy life.
You're always so cheap, I hung up. Blocked the entire branch of the family tree.
Done. Then Marcus called with real news.
Your cousin is drowning in debt, he said. Credit cards, loans, even a loan shark. He is financially dead, so that was it.
Not greed, desperation.
They hadn't run off for love.
They'd run off because my cousin was sinking and saw my wife as an escape pod. And both of them saw me as the wallet attached to the escape pod. But a storm was coming, and they had no idea. 2 months later, while they were still posting cocktail photos from Singapore, I was sitting in a glass conference room signing the biggest contract of my life. The acquisition papers. $50 million when the ink dried.
The company's PR team asked if they could publish the announcement immediately. Yes, I said.
Make it loud. By 9:17 a.m. the next morning, every tech outlet had picked it up, and by 11:23 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. International code. I answered. It's me, my ex-wife said.
The voice that had once mocked me sounded suddenly soft, almost rehearsed.
I saw the news. Congratulations.
We should talk. Who is this? I asked. Don't do that. The company was created during our marriage.
Legally, I'm entitled to half. She actually said that. I let her silence hang.
Then, speak to my lawyer. I hung up. 5 minutes later, my cousin called. Cousin, we need to talk. This is important.
Friday p.m., somewhere neutral. Fine, I said. At my lawyer's office when Friday came.
They arrived together, her in a dress bought with my stolen money.
Him in a suit that screamed last chance at dignity. They entered the conference room trying to look confident. Marcos pressed record. Their claim. She deserved $25 million. Half. Marcos listened politely.
Then opened a thin folder. Before we discuss division of assets, he said.
Are you aware that both of you are defendants in an active criminal case for aggravated theft?
Her smile flickered. That's separate, she said tightly. No, Marcos replied. It is the foundation of this case. He placed a timeline on the table. March 15th, you robbed him and fled the country.
March 18th, he closed the first investment round.
April, major clients.
2 weeks later, acquisition interest. Your absence didn't hinder him.
It accelerated him. My cousin shifted in his seat. Marcos didn't stop. We also have full documentation of your financial situation, he said, looking at my cousin. Debts, loans, missed payments. You were collapsing financially. My ex-wife whipped around to stare at him. Is that true?
He hesitated. It's
temporary, Marcos continued. And we have proof you sold items from the marital home without consent, my cousin blurted.
We had to sell what we could for the trip. My ex kicked him under the table, but too late. Marcos leaned forward. So you admit the sale and the conspiracy. She tried to salvage it. We came here to negotiate fairly, not to be attacked. Marcos opened the final folder. My client will drop all criminal charges if you sign this divorce settlement. You waive all claims.
You return the $47,000 within 180 days.
You acknowledge full responsibility for the theft. The mediator nodded. Fair. Legally solid. My cousin panicked. It was her idea.
He exploded. She said you were broke. She told me to help her.
She froze. Her mouth opened,
Closed.
opened again. You traitor. He pointed at her.
You told me he'd never amount to anything.
That he was pathetic. That we deserved better. She lunged at him. The mediator stopped her. Their lawyer sighed. Defeated. We need a moment through the glass.
We watched them argue like two rats in a bucket when they returned.
She looked hollow. I'll sign. She signed every page with shaking hands. The cure for greed is consequences. When she finished,
she exhaled shakily. I don't have the money, then find a job. I said. My cousin backed away from her. You will help me pay. She snapped at him. He laughed. I am broke.
And this was your idea. He left the room without looking back. She watched him walk away, alone and powerless. Marcos closed his folder. It's done. I stood. No, it's settled. Done was the day they walked out of my house. Marcos placed a hand on my shoulder. You got justice. I nodded. Finally. Done. The day the mediation ended.
She walked out with nothing but a folder of signed papers, a debt of $47,000,
and the realization that the man she'd thrown her life away for had abandoned her on the spot. Meanwhile, I walked out into the sunlight, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Quiet. Not joy. Not triumph. Just silence where chaos used to live.
5 months passed. She made exactly 2 payments, $800 and $600. Then she vanished behind excuses, bank problems, delays, unexpected expenses. Marcos didn't blink. With 180 days almost up, he told me, we will file criminal charges. She'll face up to 3 years. Let her attorney worry about the details, she can't avoid it. Her expensive lawyer dropped her when she stopped paying him. Now she had a rookie public defender and a pile of problems she had created herself. My cousin?
Gone. Phone disconnected.
Car repossessed. A mutual friend whispered he'd moved back into his mother's house after debt collectors visited. The universe has a sense of humor. Then my sister called one night. You won't believe who messaged me, she said.
She wants to borrow $5,000.
Says she's fighting an unfair legal case.
Says you're being vindictive. I didn't reply.
There was nothing to say. She actually said, he can afford it. He's rich now, and that sentence told me everything. She never cared about right or wrong. She cared about access.
Access to my effort.
My money. My future.
not me.
With Marcus handling the legal fallout, I shifted my focus.
I stopped trying to understand people who had already shown me exactly who they were. I stopped thinking about what I lost. Instead, I thought about what I had removed from my life. A dead weight, a parasite, a betrayal masquerading as love.
Money didn't change me.
Silence did.
I booked my first real vacation in years. Japan, Thailand, New Zealand. A trip for myself, not for anyone else to hijack, manipulate, or twist into guilt.
But on quiet nights, when the noise of the world dies down, a thought sometimes appears.
Did I go too far?
Or not far enough? I never asked the question out loud, because deep down, I already know the truth. If you told me a year ago that I'd be sitting alone on a balcony overlooking Tokyo at AM, sipping tea instead of fighting with lawyers or watching bank accounts bleed dry, I would have laughed in your face.
But that first night in Japan, something clicked into place. For the first time in a decade, there was no edge in my chest.
No buzzing anxiety. No waiting for the next explosion at home. Just neon lights, the hum of the city, and the unsettling realization that peace feels foreign when you've lived too long in chaos.
The days blurred into stillness. Kyoto temples.
Osaka street food.
Walking streets where no one knew my name, my story, or the weight I'd been dragging. And somewhere between Shinjuku and the southern coast, I understood something brutal. The person I had been with her was not someone I respected.
I was a caretaker, a financier,
A buffer for her moods, a shield for her irresponsibility,
a quiet bystander while my cousin circled my life like a vulture.
I had mistaken endurance for loyalty, patience for love, sacrifice for stability.
And she had mistaken me for a lifelong source of income.
In Thailand, I spent days alone on beaches, watching storms drift in and out of the water like time-lapse warnings.
Not once did I think about her without remembering the airport video of the suitcases, the laughter, the caption that burned through whatever remained of my marriage.
In New Zealand, on a cliff overlooking water so blue it didn't look real, Marcus called me.
She missed the final repayment deadline, he said. We moved forward with the charges. I didn't feel revenge. I didn't feel satisfaction.
I felt distance.
Like it was happening to someone else entirely. When I flew home, the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt mine in a way it never had before.
The locks she couldn't open, the rooms she would never walk into again.
The life she no longer had access to. I didn't rebuild who I was. I stripped away everything that kept me smaller than I needed to be.
So when people ask me now, friends, colleagues, even strangers online, if I regret the way I handled things, I give them the only answer that has ever felt honest.
I didn't destroy her life.
I stopped letting her destroy mine. 3 weeks after I got back, Marcos called again.
His tone had that calm, surgical precision he only used when he was about to dismantle someone's life with a single sentence. She's filed an emergency motion, he said. She's claiming emotional hardship, financial abuse, and
you won't believe this.
That you manipulated her into stealing the 47,000. I sat still, letting the absurdity wash over me.
She's cornered, Marcos continued.
People like her only have two moves when everything collapses: denial and reinvention. She's trying both. The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. When I walked into the courthouse, she was already there.
But not the version from Bali, the one draped in designer dresses and filtered confidence.
This version was a caricature of humility, cheap black suit,
hair tied back, no makeup,
a folder clutched to her chest like a schoolgirl waiting for exam results. She didn't look at me. She didn't have the courage. Her new attorney, a young public defender who looked 5 minutes out of law school, stood beside her flipping through documents he clearly hadn't read until that morning. Marcos leaned toward me. She's about to learn the difference between drama and evidence. The judge took his seat.
Her lawyer launched into a trembling monologue about how she acted under emotional pressure, that she believed the funds were available for family use, and that
Mr. Bennett me had contributed to her confusion
through controlling behavior. When he finally finished, the judge turned to us. Marcos stood, opened a single folder, and removed 4 sheets of paper. Your Honor, I submit into evidence the following. Exhibit A, the bank records showing she transferred $47,000 to herself. Exhibit B, the publicly posted Instagram video thanking my client for financing their future.
Exhibit C. Travel receipts documenting the intentional use of stolen funds.
Exhibit D. A recorded admission by the CEO conspirator confirming premeditation. He placed them down one by one like cards in a winning hand. Her lawyer froze.
She froze. The room wasn't silent, it was dead. The judge looked directly at her. Mrs.
Bennett, is your signature on the withdrawal slips?
Yes. Is your voice in the video?
Yes. Did you leave the country with your husband's cousin?
Yes, she whispered, almost inaudible. And did you empty the home before leaving? No answer, Mrs. Bennett. She swallowed. Yes. The judge leaned back, motion denied. Her lawyer slumped. She closed her eyes, finally understanding that this wasn't social media. There was no edit button,
No undo.
no audience to clap for her performance. Marcos gathered the papers calmly outside the courtroom. She finally approached me. Her voice shook not from sadness, but from the collapse of a fantasy she had clung to like a life raft. You're really going to go through with the charges?
Yes, even though you don't need the money.
Especially because you stole it. She stared at me, and I watched the realization dawn. I was no longer the man she could manipulate with tears, with excuses.
With soft hands on my shoulders whispering half-truths, whatever version of me she remembered he was con. You loved me once, she said. No, I corrected.
I tolerated you. There's a difference. She backed away like she'd been slapped.
Her attorney tried to usher her off, but she kept staring at me, as if waiting for the old me to reappear and forgive her. He didn't, and he never would. That was the day she finally understood what she had really lost, not the money,
not the marriage, not the house she'd never walk into again. She lost access to the one person who ever tried to give her a life she didn't deserve. And that loss was permanent. 2 months slipped by, and the consequences began closing around her like slow-moving steel. First came the creditors, then the wage garnishment notice, then the formal letter scheduling her criminal trial. My sister called me again one night, voice low, as if she were reporting a crime from her kitchen. She's working at a call center now, she said. Part-time, minimum wage. She cries in the bathroom between shifts. I didn't feel joy.
But I didn't feel pity either.
Some debts aren't financial. The next week, Marcos forwarded me an email from her public defender subject. Request for settlement meeting apparently. She wanted to avoid trial. She finally understood that judges don't respond
well to Bali vacation videos funded by stolen money. I agreed to
meet. The conference room was the same,
one where I watched her collapse months earlier.
She walked in wearing the same cheap black suit, but now it looked worn, frayed at the edges, one thread from falling apart. She didn't sit,
didn't greet me,
just stood there clutching her bag like a shield. My lawyer says I should negotiate, she began.
Her voice had a dull flatness now, a tiredness that seemed to sit in her bones.
I can't pay everything. Not the full amount. Not even half. Not now. Marcos didn't respond. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she continued.
I know you won't give it.
I just
need time.
Loans. Anything. I'm trying. She took a breath and said the thing she had clearly rehearsed in front of a mirror. I ruined everything because I thought you would always come to my rescue.
I thought you would yell and cry, but eventually let it go.
You always did. I didn't speak.
She continued, when you sold the company, I panicked.
I thought you'd move on. I thought you'd realize how little I contributed.
I convinced myself that stealing from you before you left me was
fair. That word told me everything about how she had lived inside her own head. And, I finally asked. She closed her eyes as if bracing for impact, and I was wrong.
About everything. Her hands trembled as she finally sat down. I don't want to go to jail, she whispered.
I can't.
I made mistakes, but I'm not.
I'm not evil. I didn't answer immediately because the truth was complicated. She wasn't evil.
But years of entitlement had hollowed her out until she could no longer distinguish need from greed, desire from theft,
partnership from parasitism. Marcos slid the same agreement across the table. This is still the only deal, he said.
You pay the amount you stole.
No claim to the company. No share of the sale.
No marital assets.
Payment plan or lump sum your choice. She stared at the paper. Eye shimmering but dry. My cousin won't talk to me, she whispered.
You blocked me.
He ran from everything.
I have nothing left. She rubbed her temples.
Swallowed hard. I just want my life back. I shook my head. You don't get your old life back by destroying someone else's. The silence that followed wasn't tense. It wasn't emotional. It was the silence of two people finally seeing each other clearly without the fog of love,
Anger, history, or expectation, eventually. She signed again, this time with steady hands,
as if surrender was the only thing she had left when she stood to leave. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just said one final thing. I didn't think the consequences would be real. I met her eyes. They always were. You just never believed you'd face them. She nodded once small, almost grateful, and walked out. And as the door closed behind her, I realized something important. I no longer felt anything at all. The morning of the trial arrived before dawn, pale and silent. I sat in Marcos's office, watching the city wake up through the window. He reviewed the file one last time, calm as always. She's going to ask for leniency, he said.
She'll say she's changed. She'll say she's learned her lesson.
The judge may reduce the sentence if you request it. I won't, I said, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. We walked into the courtroom together. She was already there for the first time. She didn't look like she was preparing a performance.
No makeup, no theatrics,
no posture of righteous indignation. Just a tired woman sitting alone at a wooden table,
staring at her hands like they were foreign. Her public defender whispered to her,
but she hardly reacted. The judge took his seat. The clerk read the charges.
And then it was her turn. Mrs. Bennett, do you have anything to say before sentencing?
She rose slowly.
Every movement looked heavy. I do, she whispered. I want to say I'm sorry, but I know that doesn't fix anything.
I spent years believing the world owed me comfort, and when I didn't get it,
I took it from the one person who actually tried to give me a life I didn't earn. Her voice cracked. I thought he would forgive me. I thought he always would. I thought I was untouchable because he was kind.
And I was wrong.
I deserve whatever comes next. Nothing dramatic.
No tears. No attempts to rewrite the story. Just truth, late, but finally unvarnished. The judge nodded. Thank you. Please be seated. He turned to me. Mr.
Bennett, do you wish to make a statement?
I stood. I don't want revenge, I said. I don't want her to suffer.
But I do want the court to recognize that she stole nearly $50,000 and fled the country with a relative who helped her do it.
If this case involved strangers, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
It would be open and shut. I sat. Her shoulders slumped.
But she didn't look angry, just resigned. The judge reviewed the file,
tapping his pen once, in light of the evidence, the admission of guilt, and the defendant's inability to repay the stolen funds. This court sentences, she closed her eyes, the defendant to 2 years of supervised probation, financial restitution, and mandatory employment verification.
Jail time is suspended, conditional on full repayment. Her attorney sagged with relief. She covered her mouth. Tears finally forming. It wasn't freedom. It wasn't punishment. It was accountability. The hearing ended. Papers shuffled. People stood. Conversations rose. She approached slowly, not to bargain, not to accuse, but simply to speak. Thank you, she said quietly.
For not asking for prison. I know you could have. I nodded. Nothing more. She hesitated, then added, I lost everything trying to chase something that wasn't real. You were real. I just didn't see it until it was gone. She stepped back. And I won't bother you again. I'm done taking from you. Then she walked away, not defiant, not angry, just small. Marcos exhaled. Well, that's the end of the chapter. But it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a release. 5 months later, I stood on the balcony of another hotel in another country.
New Zealand this time. Quiet ocean. Cold wind. Sky so white it made my past feel microscopic. My phone buzzed.
A notification. Payment received. $600.
Her third payment. Steady. Slow. Earned for the first time in her life. I put the phone away. The horizon stretched out in front of me. Clean and unclaimed. I could travel where I wanted. Build what I wanted.
Become whoever I wanted. Because the truth I'd refused to see for years was finally obvious. You don't move on when someone leaves. You move on when you finally put down the weight they left behind. and I had, completely.